Hit the restart button. We're right there too. Recharge those batteries. We're here to help you. Restart, recharge. Restart, recharge.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Katie Ritter.
And I'm Justin Thomas, and this is the Restart Recharge podcast, a podcast for coaches by coaches. We bring you all the tips and tricks for your everyday work as an instructional technology coach, or, whatever they're calling you out there in your school districts.
So hopefully you leave this episode feeling just a little bit less on your own coaching island.
And for today, we have a really great podcast today. We are going to bring you tips and suggestions for making the most out of your summer reading, so we can make some time for reading and what to read for professional growth as you are reaching that unstructured downtime for the summer, or really any time altogether. So we have two coaches here. We have Tracee, Keough, we have Michael Rausch, and I'll introduce Tracee real quick. So Tracee is a classroom teacher for 11 years before making the role of a technology integration coach for the last year and a half. Tracee is taught second grade and 5th through 8th grades. The highlight of her career so far was teaching in the Innovation Academy, where students were in a personalized one-to-one learning environment where students could excel with online curriculum and hands-on learning. Currently, Tracee is a coach for 2 different districts, both having multiple school buildings and are spread out amongst a large area. As a coach, Tracee has worked with the blended learning, hybrid schedules, virtual schedules, and face-to-face schedules, along with the virtual academy for one of the districts. Welcome, Tracee.
Glad to have you back, Tracee. Thanks. Yeah. And I have the pleasure of introducing Michael Rausch. Michael specializes in educational technology, assistive technology, and universal design for learning. In addition to serving as a Forward Edge technology integration specialist, Michael serves as an adjunct professor of education for Wilmington College. Michael and his wife Angie live in rural southwestern Ohio. They have 4 adult children, 2 in grade school and 1 grandson. Michael's passion in education is helping every student learn to be able to define and achieve what the highest level of success means for them. So welcome back, Michael.
Thank you very much.
Glad to have you. And for those who don't watch our YouTube channel, this is the first time that we are recording in person, thanks to COVID vaccines and all of that goodness allowing us to get back together. So we're excited to be here in person.
As Anna Maria said, we are now seeing people in 3D.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming.
I feel like 3D podcast today. So, all right. So we've probably got a short little episode here for you, but hoping to help jumpstart your summer with some good books to read, maybe some fun nonfiction, fiction, some things to help you in the job, some murder mysteries or whatever you're into, YA, young adult literature, whatever you like. But we're going to dive in and kind of thinking, of course now at the time that this episode's being released, it's summer, so there's plenty of time now for that. But during the school year, when and how, if at all, are you guys able to find time for reading anything professionally?
Yeah, I don't think, and maybe part of this is, part of this is the job, part of this is being a parent. My wife has a full-time job as well. I don't think I find time to do anything.
Yeah.
I have to make time for anything that's going to happen. Especially with something that's important but doesn't really feel like it has the urgency sometimes of that professional reading has to it. And honestly, I had to come to grips a long time ago with the fact that I'm really not a good reader. I don't read fast. I don't read giant volumes of material. And it's really easy sometimes to like look up to people who are those kind of like book a day people, and you think they're like, oh, I ought to be able to be like that. I want to be one of those people who reads so much and is up on everything, and then you start feeling like kind of a failure at it because you're not at that level. But it's gotten to a point where in college I had to, once I finally kind of figured out, okay, I'm really not good at this. I'm just not good at reading. there were some tips, some tricks that you could learn to figure out, because I was one of those people who I got stuck at that point of when I read, I was still like reading to myself and thinking of the sound of every word as I was reading it, and that just like slowed me down so much. And so just like, if you're going to do a diet or an exercise program or something like that, it can help to have, a coach or some expert advice on doing some of that. It helped me to actually get a little bit of expert advice on reading and some ways to kind of speed that process up and help me with some of that. So
do you have that expert's number? Because maybe
it was a college prof.
Yeah.
Because you get to a point. I was still one of those people that, like I said, I read a word and I think the sound out loud as I read the word. And in college, I just most people hit a point where if you're reading that way, you are going to spend hours and hours a day just to get through the amount of reading material that you have. Thankfully, I had a professor, Dr. Jim Girdwood, who recognized that out of some of us and just kind of took a group of us and said, look, guys, if you want to learn, you need to learn how to read a little more effectively, a little better way. And, every kid goes from that stage of they go from reading letters to reading words. And most of us kind of stop there. And he said some of it is like speed reading tips and tricks kind of things, but some of it's still just good reading techniques. You can learn to go from reading words to reading phrases, to reading lines. You can perceive an entire line. Your eyes, your brain can perceive an entire line of text and then sort it out and figure out what it means a little later. Instead of just reading two words and trying to figure, okay, what does that mean? Okay, and then go on to the next and go on to the next. And it wasn't easy. I mean, it took work. It takes work for me to kind of bring it up and do it again now. But it got to the point where, I can, when I start calling that stuff up, I can actually read a little more effectively, a little more efficiently. I don't recall every word that I read, but I get as much out of it as I do if I go the slow route before. So
Michael, I wish we would have had this conversation maybe 2.5 years ago when I started grad school again. Yeah.
But it was, it got to the point where I didn't need more time to read. I just needed to get more reading done in the time that I had.
Another good quote from Michael. Brooke said the other day, Brooke on our team said, can we get a cardboard cutout of Michael that just is like holding a sign and we'll do interchangeable quotes?
Yeah. I feel like it's worthwhile. And I agree with Michael. Like, it's not about finding the time, but making the time to read and picking out what's important to you. And to piggyback off of like finding that time or making that time, sometimes that work really well are those busy times for teachers. So testing seasons when they don't really want you in your room, you're just an extra body at that point. So those might be good times to pull aside a book or have something available before after school. If you are like me, I like to read on my lunch breaks because then I'm off the computer and I have some rest for my eyes. So I'm not overusing those and looking through computer stuff or worrying about ruining my computer from eating over it. So those are ways that like I make time, and then you just kind of have to make it a priority. If it's important to you, then you're going to do it. If it's not, like Michael said, diet and exercise, if it's not a priority, there's not someone coaching you, you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So those are ways that like I force time.
I'm one of those people. I don't want to put myself in a place where I feel like I have to be in a book all the time either.
Yeah.
There are certain times of the year that I know I'm going to be so busy that there's other stuff like that. And just kind of give myself permission to like, you know what? I don't need to be reading a book in September. Right. I've got all that other stuff going on.
Yeah.
Sure. December might be a great time to read a book. June, July may be a great time to catch up on some of those books, but not to feel like, okay, if I didn't finish a book this week or this month, so I'm a failure. And there's some months that it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like a failure every day, and not reading a book is pretty low on the list. It's making me feel like failure right now.
And I know Michael and I talked about, like, especially with professional books, it's nice to kind of have a choose your own adventure thought process to them. So as you come to certain chapters, you're like, yeah, this doesn't really apply to where I'm at right now, or I kind of already understand this topic, so I'm going to jump ahead. And just, even if it's not written that way, you just kind of choose your own adventure in the chapters and make it what you need it to be at that time.
Yeah, that's smart. So you don't waste your time.
Yeah.
I know that
I'm in
we
college.
Yeah.
You didn't read everything.
What did you choose? I know our team book study that we do every year helps like keep me accountable and actually like having other people to do it with and talk about. And then, I know that Brooke usually organizes it for us. She does a great job with actually making it like talk about it, make it relevant. We dig in like how are we actually going to apply it. So that is helpful for me during the year when everything feels so crazy.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that too because then all four of us can read the book and get different things out of it. So then talking about it as well through book study always is very nice as well. But when you do find time, or should I say make time for yourself to read, what are the type of books that you are reaching for? What is usually kind of your topics of interest?
So for me, if it's not professional, I'm very much a young adult reader. I like to get lost in fictional worlds that I can form pictures in my head and get lost in characters and kind of drift off to a non-reality space.
Yeah.
As a very busy mom of four and coach and working. Professional reads, I'm typically reaching for things where they've been recommended by fellow coaches or teachers that have really loved them. Or ISTE recommendations. I've got a couple on my plate that I'm really interested in from ISTE recommendations that they have done book chats on Twitter, or Twitter recommendations that just kind of spark something in them where it's like, hey, my teachers could really use something like this and maybe it'll benefit me. So those are the ones that I'm reaching for.
I think I'm getting the most out of, and this is kind of unusual, I'm getting the most out of like biographies or personal accounts. I used to hate them. I used to just hate reading biographies, but I think I figured out that was mostly because I was expecting them to be written like a journalist would write, like an unbiased account, and they never are.
Pretty biased.
Yeah, they're absolutely. They're not detached observers to their own life when they're writing those things. So now I kind of I go in understanding that there's that implicit level of bias, but there's still a lot that I can learn about the situations, the perspectives, actions, and they don't have to strictly be about educators or about people that you would study academically to do that. And so there's always in those biographies there's always some story of a struggle that they faced, and what the barriers were, and how they approached it, and how they resolved it. And as coaches, I mean, that's what we do every day. That's what we
Find
do
the struggle
every day, multiple times a day. And so just being able to draw from the stories of people who go through that same process. And this is no surprise to anybody here at the table. I think a lot in analogies.
Really?
Yeah. And so just being able to to take somebody's story and okay, yeah, you know what, I've never been on stage in an auditorium in front of 40,000 people, but I get what he's saying. I get what Mick Jagger is saying. He talks about
the moves he's got. Well, I was thinking that too, Michael, because from like reading people and stories like that, I mean, as a coach, that would even translate, when we give presentations and talks, it's so much better when we embed stories. Like, we know people remember stories, and it's sometimes hard to connect a story to how am I using Google Forms for formative assessment, but and sometimes you'll have them, sometimes you won't, but anytime that we can embed that story, so you're really kind of broadening you're great at telling stories throughout your presentations and connecting that. So that's a good tip. I might need to pick up on that.
And I know we talked about with that storyline, keeping in mind, like I was having this conversation with my mom with books. She does not read because she doesn't form pictures in her head when she reads. To her, they're just words on a page. So really taking into account, especially as coaches, like as you're giving those stories, not only painting the picture, but also being able to give relevant examples so that those people that don't have that ability can still relate to something. Because there's like Michael said, there's lots of types of readers, and if you're just painting one picture, then you're not reaching your whole audience or the teacher you're trying to coach, because you don't know, they may not even know they don't create that atmosphere in their head.
I think that's huge too, to help the teachers when you're working with them paint that picture of what this actually could look like for your classroom when we're working on an ed tech tool. Like, it's different than us just sitting here talking about it, and what you're looking at, it's going to look really awesome when you use it with your classroom. You got to help them kind of paint that picture. For some teachers, it's easier than others, but I think once they really get that visual image, they know that it can work really well.
And Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off. I wanted to make sure that you were done with what you were saying.
It's, I was saying a little bit about, not necessarily having to read biographies of educators and, there are things that I'm, interested in or that outside of, I kind of threw in McTaggart as an example of that. It's like, what you're reading a biography by Bob Dylan as a professional. Yeah, why not? It's, there's some performance that goes into any of this kind of stuff that we do. There's some songwriting that goes into all of this, and so it's not a bad thing to pull some of that kind of stuff in. And I love the recommendations that I get from ISTE or from ASCD or places like that. But sometimes it's something totally afield of that still kind of speaks to me.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of my philosophy. I think like sometimes I'm just burnt out on education. But I think kind of like you said, Michael, back to the beginning, like you feel like if you're not doing it, you see these things out there and then you kind of feel like failure a little bit. So my take, like I have read a lot of not necessarily, biographies or, kind of the route that you're talking about, but just other books that are not necessarily about education, but I have pulled so much from them that I have applied in this role as a coach. Like I know, our team read the book Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard, by the Heath brothers. That one I would highly recommend to any coach. That has nothing to do with coaching or even education specifically, but think of how much our team has got about how to help people change these like long-standing mindsets. And I read the originals and the end of average. Those are two great ones that, there's a couple of education examples throughout, but it's really not geared for specifically education at all. So I like that take. That's kind of the take I use too. It's just kind of step out of education, because I think for us to creatively problem solve, it requires like creative thinking, and we've got to pull from so many different other places for that. So Tracee, you kind of mentioned it. I think the next question that I was going to ask you guys is where you are finding your next book when you do finally make the time, because time is precious. So you don't want to waste it on something that stinks. Tracee, you mentioned like maybe some Twitter chats, ISTE, respected colleagues. I don't know if you guys have anything to add from where you're finding those next reads that you use professionally.
Yeah, I keep kind of a list of, there's some professional friends who I know are great readers, and I kind of use them as like my triage. Like I know they're going to read a ton of books, so they can just kind of tell me what the good ones are, so that I can filter that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, some folks that I tend to lean on for, if they really like a book, I'm going to like it. If they really like part of a book, then I can know to go to that part of a book like that. That's some of those professionals close by and far away are kind of where I go. And I tell you, I've also tried to make a really conscious effort to vary the perspectives that I'm reading. I'll read something from someone that I don't know in a part of the world I've never been to, and then I'll maybe try to go to something that's a little closer, maybe even somebody I do know. That has written something, and somebody challenged. This was part of a Twitter challenge that happened to you a while back. They said list like the last 10 authors that you've read, and then like look at who they are, and if they're all like from a particular field or all from a particular place, or if there's something very like too similar about those 10, what's not in that list, and who can you go read that's not in that list to kind of open up some newer, open up some different avenues, some newer perspectives, like instead of just kind of keeping the, because when you like certain thing, you may want to read everything that they've put out. And it may not be bad stuff, but you may just be missing out on some perspectives. And so I really do, especially with, I can get bored with reading really quick. And that helps, to vary kind of the styles and the genres and the perspectives that you're looking at when you're reading.
Yeah. I have a girlfriend or a teacher colleague that I used to work with who became an author. And so she does every month a wheel of reading. And so it's like a roulette wheel that she spins, and each little colored space has a different type of reading genre. So it could be young adult, it could be horror, it could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. So she lets the wheel kind of pick the next book genre that she's going to read to make sure she's continuing to grow her mindset in that sense. So that's
I
kind of fun,
love
too.
that. She also feels like someone who makes me feel like a failure now for not reading enough. No.
But that is now her job. She left education to become a full-time reader or writer. So to do that, to be successful, you have to be reading multiple types of genres to understand what goes into great novels.
I love that.
I would need a spin again card because
I would too.
that one didn't count.
She had one on there that was like letting her kids pick. So they got to go to her bookshelf and had certain spaces they were allowed to pick from and books that they could pick. So.
Okay, so follow-up question to that. With not only are we talking about like finding and making the time for the reading and like, okay, where are you getting it from? That's great when you finally have the time to do it and read it. But then how do you guys make sure that that actually translates from words on the page, ideas in your head to actual implementation into your practice?
So for me, this one that like highlights in my head was I read, I want to say it was Teach Like a Pirate or Tech Like a Pirate from the Dave Burgess Publishing Company. And I love Lead Like a Pirate. All of them. I have them like all saved in my Amazon wish list.
Was that a hint?
They're all there. Every time I see them, because that way I don't have to keep track of pictures on my phone. They're just where I can always go pull them. But I had gotten really excited about a plant, like something that was explained in there, and I put together a whole PD plan based on Hunger Games. Each quarter was a different, so the second Hunger Games, they're in like a clock situation, and every time it moved, something else happened. So I put together a whole PD plan. Sorry, for those of you that have never seen Hunger Games, I apologize, but yes.
Rosebud was the sled, right?
Who? No. Back to my point. Sorry. Each quarter became a different challenge for the PD schedule. In the beginning, we did like teams, and they had team flags that they created, and we got really excited about it. But by second quarter, their excitement had dwindled because they didn't understand where it had all built from. So I learned in that experience, you have to kind of give the experience to them as well. Like, this is where this came from, this is why, and spark the energy there as well. But that was me taking something from a book that really resonated and turned it into something that would help my teachers. And currently in situations, I'm reading another book that is helping me kind of put together a PD plan for the summer for authentic experiences for other teachers to use, as well as creative ways to be productive as a teacher. Because we all know there's times where we get just completely behind in life.
Yeah. So you're just kind of like naturally picking out the best things that you like and like turning around, maybe tweaking them, but actually like implementing them.
Yes.
Okay.
Or pulling what I'm seeing, like what my teachers are talking about. What do they need? What are they expressing needs for? And trying to find ways to help.
Yeah, that's what Tracee's talking about. It's so easy to forget. You've put all this time into reading a book, and it's kind of simmering in your head, and everything's kind of coming, and then finally, at some point down the road, there's this flash, and you've got this idea of something that would just be fantastic, and you're so charged up about it, and you go in front of a group of people who you just started seeing about this thing 30 seconds ago, and you want them to be as charged up about it as you are, and you forget all of the time and all of the prep work that went into you getting to this point. And that doesn't just automatically transfer. And so being able to put in some of the time, some of the effort, like we were talking about the book study before, if you're the only one who's reading the book, nobody else is coming in with the same background and the same preparedness that you are. So having other people reading some of those books, or at least part of that stuff at the same time as you, is huge. I think just that ability to, okay, I've got this book, I've got some great ideas out of this. We're going to start by just kind of hitting some of that low-hanging fruit. Some things that we can accomplish quickly with a minimum of effort, so that you can start building some of that same juice, some of that same energy that got built up in you as you were reading that material.
Yeah, I used to. So I typically read from my iPad, like just with the Kindle app or whatever. So I would, highlight any ideas that I liked, and then when I had time to read anything other than what is assigned to me, I would always try to write like a short blog post and like pull out those ideas. Because it was always faster for me to go to like what I said I was really into than try to like page all the way through the book. So I don't know.
I
That was
actually
something I did.
make sticky notes of things that as I'm going through my book, I'm like, this is a great PD topic, or this is a great badge conversation worth creating a badge off of. So I start
that.
to sticky note those out.
Awesome. Well, we want to know what both of you are reading right now, if there is anything. But first, we're going to take a momentary break for our sponsor. Looking for a program that reaches all teachers and learning new tools to integrate in their lessons? Edu Badges is the answer. Edu is an anytime, anywhere badging program that is designed to take bite-sized tools for instruction and teach teachers how to use them. Edu has received the ISTE Seal of Alignment for educator standards, and each badge in our expanding library is aligned to the ISTE standards and the SAMR model. Learn more about the program that teachers call addicting at forward-edge.net/edubadges. Welcome back. All right, so we want to know what exactly is going on for your reading material right this instant. So is there anything that right now you got in your backpack or right there at your nightstand, or I don't know, in your car, maybe every time you hit a red light or traffic or something? I don't know. Probably don't do that.
I
No, not, but you never know what these two are getting into.
Not that much trouble. I am currently reading Adventures in Authentic Learning, 21 Step-by-Step Projects from an Ed Tech Coach by Kristen Harrington.
Oh, nice. Kristen.
This was a ISTE book chat for Twitter that was recommended. So I'm finally getting around to reading it after the Twitter chat's over, but at least I'm getting around to reading it, going through and highlighting and sticky noting things that I feel like are super important or that I can roll into PD sessions or help specific teachers I know kind of utilize. I love this one so far because not only does she break down the topic and what they're talking about in the chapter, but then it also leads into specific lesson plans. So how as a coach to walk in and say, here's a plan that we can use, the things that they need, how to approach it, which even as a veteran coach, I'll call myself that, really is eye-opening as another way to approach different situations. So that's my current professional read.
And the title and author one more time?
Adventures in Authentic Learning by Kristen Harrington.
Cool. We will link to that in the show notes of the episode. I'll have to add that to the list. I know Kristen. She's a wonderful coach. Yeah.
I am reading Kwame Alexander's The Right Thing, and right is spelled W-R-I-T-E. Over the past few years at the school where I work, there's been kind of a common theme, and it's really solidified more this year from some teachers that their students in general struggle to express themselves, either academically or in social emotional contexts. They struggle to express themselves in appropriate ways. That comes through in lack of performance academically. That comes through in behavior issues that result in, at some point even may result in suspensions, expulsions that just wreak all sorts of havoc with, at a point you get to a point where you're only concerned with, student safety instead of, being able to provide, the education that we want to provide these kids. But the flip side of that is that I know that there are really some amazing stories in those kids. They have rich, full experiences. They know a lot of things. When they have the opportunity to engage deeply with content, they do so, and they can really do some amazing things. And so that kind of led me back to some of Kwame Alexander's work and this book that he has written, which basically leads you through the process of creating a writing workshop for kids. From concept to completion, and by completion, the book actually goes through the whole process of not only the kids, writing their own material. In this case, it's poetry, but they write their own material. They collect it, they edit it, they revise it, they publish it. And so I mean, part of the whole process on this too is that there's, there's an author's night, and you bring people in, and the students read their original work in front of people. They have books there that are just full of the material that those kids have done.
What an amazing idea!
Oh, and it combines expression with writing, with social emotional learning, with project-based learning, because I mean all this stuff that goes together to kind of make this happen. And we need to be able to address students' ability to present coherent thought.
Yeah.
We need to be able to connect with them in these social emotional ways. It combines all this great stuff. And so I'm at the point now, I'm rereading the book. I've reached out to a couple of folks internally there to figure out, okay, who else wants to read this book? Who else kind of wants to get on board this train with me? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't care what subject matter they teach. I just want to find a couple of teachers who will get as excited about this as I would want to be to make it happen.
I don't think you're going to have any problem.
No, I don't either.
I'm ready to host a kid probably book night.
Once they start reading the book, once you watch Kwame Alexander's TEDx talk on the power of yes, once you get through some of those things, it's hard not to just really jump in and jump on board with some of that stuff. And it turns that constant, oh my gosh, it's another awful day for these kids. They don't know how to write. They don't know how to, they're just off the hook. It's like, okay, wait a minute. We're identifying problems. Let's do something. Let's really address it. So that's what I'm reading right now.
Okay.
For my thought process behind it is by the end of summer, I want to have a group of teachers that are ready to come in day one and make this our goal for next school year, is to make a group of students, a class of students, I don't know who it's going to be, but to make them published authors by the end of next school year.
Oh my gosh. Okay, more to come on that, and content team, Tracee. Follow up podcast here.
One more time, the book name.
The book name is The Right Thing, WRITE Thing, by Kwame Alexander. It is a redo of his original work that was called the Page to Stage Workshop. This is the kind of the new updated version of it.
That's so cool.
And we're excited for some more content coming later, right?
Yeah, there we go.
Throw it on the list.
Yeah. So that's what you guys are reading right now. What is the number one? Every coach who's listening to the podcast, what's your main recommendation? What do they have to read to help them in their role as a coach?
Geez, this one was so easy for me. Anytime this question comes up, anything like it, this is the one that pops up, and everybody, I think I've bought every one of you a copy of this.
I know
book.
where you're going.
Kevin Carroll's Rules of the Red Rubber Ball. That's number one for me. No matter who you are or what you do, it's just all about the passion behind why you do what you do. It's such an easy book to read. I'm an awful reader, and I can sit down and read it within an hour or two. I can get that whole book done. I try to read it every year just for that particular purpose. That book, I got to go another shout out here. That book was actually originally recommended to me by Dr. John Marshausen, who was a superintendent locally in this area for a while, and I think he just became superintendent at Dublin City Schools. Wow. So he's still here in Ohio.
Okay.
But yeah, he recommended that book to me years ago. I got it, I read it, and instantly just totally fell in love. And like I said, I don't know how many copies of that book I have bought over the years to give to other people, but that's the one that I would pick.
Nice. Tracee?
I struggled with this one a lot more because I love all of the tech like a pirate, teach like a pirate, the imagination behind that one. But listening to Michael talk, I would say, Oh, the Places You Go by Dr. Seuss is another one of my favorites, purely because it inspires imagination, creativity, thinking outside the box, and remembering where you started and where you can go and all of the possibilities in between. For me, it's something I pull out every year, and we read at the end of every year at home. And each one of my kids have a copy that goes to school and is signed by every one of their teachers that they've had so far and every coach. And it is something that was given to me when I left my last district. So it's like just constantly remembering you've come so far and there's so much more ahead of you. And I feel like this year especially, it's a great reminder to all of our coaches and teachers that they've really tackled an incredibly challenging year. So
I love that. How inspirational.
Both of those are really good.
I know. I'm not throwing mine out now. I was
I
gonna
know,
get
I
all
was
like,
gonna-
yeah.
I know. My goodness. Well, I'll toss one out if you want to toss one out as well.
Go for it, Justin.
So I read this book back when I was in grad school, Shaping School Culture. It's by Terrence E. Deal and Kent D. Peterson, and it's a really cool book because it really kind of opens your eyes. I would say every school is a different type of school. It's not just no cookie cutter schools, right? So you have to kind of put your own little blend on the culture there, and that's something that I think is huge because I think that's one of the number one things for why people think a school is a bad school is because they think the culture's bad or something like that. So this is a book that I think is kind of geared to anyone, teachers, tech coaches, admin, really anyone within the building or the district to really kind of see how you can kind of help create a really good school culture and make ties with the community and things like that. So that really kind of left an impression on me from my grad school. But I do like both of your choices.
And say the name of your title and author one more time.
Shaping School Culture, and it's by Terrence E. Deal and Kent D. Peterson.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a lot. I would throw out. Which one do I want to throw out? Well, we've had one. I'll throw out Jenny Maguire's Courageous Adventures. That one gave me so many tangible ideas that I was able to, like, almost every chapter, every page had something that you can take back and implement, from tips to, like, as a teacher, you might want to get like power strips in your classroom so that kids can charge their device, to these larger, larger initiatives that, I've used even with district admin and different resources. So that one to me was awesome. And I think it's pretty popular now, especially Google's certified coach curriculum has drawn a lot from that book, and it's included as kind of an optional book study. So for anyone who's going through that, I definitely recommend that. Courageous Ed Ventures, ED Ventures by Jenny Maguire.
Awesome.
And she's just my EDU hero.
and dream guest to appear on our podcast.
Thanks, Tracee.
Let's toss it out there, Jenny.
You know, you got to put it out in the universe to make
Right.
things happen.
There you go.
Yes. Just for fun now, we've talked a little bit about some of your educational reads, your professional development reads. We talked a little bit even too about what you're just reading, even if it's not necessarily that. But do you have like a go-to book or biography or series or something out there that you feel that our listeners should maybe pick up in their time that they've made to read something that's maybe more on the relaxing, recharging side?
I'll start. I jumped on the Bridgerton bandwagon. I've watched the Netflix series twice in full. But to buy the books, they're completely sold out because everybody else jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
So I went the Kindle route and have been reading the Bridgerton series because I like to see the comparison between the novel and how closely they are related. And I was mad because the season 1 is over and there's nothing yet moving forward. So I needed to know how the rest of it went. So that has been my guilty pleasure on the side.
Okay.
Might have to pick that up in August.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I just finished reading a book called Losing My Voice to Find It by a guy named Mark Stewart. Mark Stewart was the lead singer for a band, actually a Christian rock band called Audio Adrenaline.
Okay.
And as the title of the book might suggest, he ended up with a vocal condition that basically caused him to lose his ability to sing and threatened his ability to talk. Now, one of the reasons I really enjoyed the book, and probably the central reason that I even picked it up to read it in the first place, is I actually went to college with those guys.
Oh.
Yeah. So the early parts of the book are stuff that happened that I was around for.
Oh, that's cool.
And
now I know what you mean when you said, or people I know earlier.
Yeah.
Michael, how many authors do you know?
Oh, come on. When you start looking up books that were written by people that live in your area or that are about your area or people that you know, you will find stuff that's been published by people that you know or that people that are from your area. And so when I say that this book that this Losing My Voice to Find It by Mark Stewart. Okay, most of the people who are listening to this, maybe you've never heard of him, maybe you have zero interest in any of that. The reason it really resonated for me was because of the personal connection. And there's no way to say there's no way to put too much emphasis on the fact that that's important. If you really are reading to be entertained, to be recharged, to this kind of stuff, get something with a personal connection, whether it's to a place, whether it's to where you live or to a favorite place that you have visited, a favorite time, something like that. Something that absolutely connects you with that is gonna really charge you up more so than just some random choice or some random recommendation from someone.
Awesome. I think there's a lot of really good book ideas out here now for everyone to check out when you make that time. Also make time for next Tuesday, June 15th, as we dig deep with 2 first-year coaches. We're going to provide tips on how to transition from a teacher to other roles in education to the coaching role. So moving from as an educator into becoming a coach. We got 2 of our first-year coaches that are going to come on and talk about what that process looked like for them. It probably was different for every one of us as a coach as we kind of shifted over. But there's definitely some commonalities between all of those 2, I do believe.
Yeah. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, be sure to subscribe to Restart Recharge wherever you listen to podcasts at restartrechargepodcast.com. Let me say that again. restartrechargepodcast.com. And then please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RRCoachCast.
Make sure you follow us. Make sure you reach out and connect with us because we want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on in your mind. If there's any topics that you want us to discuss, we'd be happy to toss them to the content team to get them on the docket.
And don't forget to look on Instagram and Facebook for the book list that our team has put together for other recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Tracee. So press the restart button.
Recharge your coaching batteries and leave feeling equipped and inspired to coach fearlessly with the Restart Recharge podcast.
A Tech Coach Collective.
I think we can actually zoom it in.
Katie, I have the face for radio, not really.
Ooh, let's do a filter.